Begin with our witnesses. I just want to advise members, we have a couple of budgets to approve for the meetings coming up, including the meeting with, is this the one with the minister? So the amount requested is $500. Is everyone in favor of approving this budget for food the day we have the minister coming to speak on supplementary estimates? All right, approved. Is that good? Is that all I have? And then we have another budget for our next study, for the study on the effects of influencers and social media content on children and adolescents, $2,500 for food during those meetings. Everyone agree? Pass that budget? All right, moving on. The final thing I wanted to mention to members is we've been invited, I think, by the Embassy of Israel to meet with some anti-Semitism experts this afternoon. You've all been invited. I just wanted to verify that you all have that invitation. They're meeting with us and members of the Justice Committee this afternoon. All right, with us today for our final meeting on the effects of influencers and social media content on children and adolescents, we have 6 witnesses. Thank you all for being with us today. We have Carol Todd, the founder and mother of the Amanda Todd Legacy Society, with us by video conference. Welcome. Maud Bonifant, full professor, Canada Research Chair in Gaming Technologies and Society from UQAM. I'm sure, I don't know which university. UQAM, thank you. From Capsana, Guy Desrosiers is here with us in person. Welcome. From Children First Canada, Sarah Austin and Zachary Fathali are here by video conference, and also Josephine Maharaj. From Luna Child and Youth Advocacy Centre, we have Karen Orser by video conference, and the Shalom Mental Health Network, which I know very well in Hamilton, Ontario. Amy Behrens, welcome. And I always pronounce Shalom wrong, so you're going to have to correct me when we turn to you. But we'll start, we'll give, everybody has 5 minutes as an organization, so if there's 3 of you, get 5 minutes in total. And we'll start with Carol Todd. You now have the floor for 5 minutes for opening remarks.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Oh, this is just an honor to be able to speak. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the members of the committee for inviting me to speak today. My name is Carol Todd. I am here as a mother, an educator, and an advocate, and as someone whose life was permanently changed by the devastating impacts of online harm on a young person. Amanda's name has become known worldwide in the fight against cyberbullying, sextortion, exploitation, and mental health. All of these being online harms and what we are here to talk about today. When I talk about online harms, it isn't theoretical for me. It comes from a deep and personal space and lived experience. I am a mother who buried her child because of what began on a screen. My daughter Amanda was bright, creative, and full of possibility. And yet her life was stolen by the cruelty of online exploitation, relentless bullying, and a digital world that was never built with safety in mind. Her story is not just a headline or a cautionary tale. It is a reminder that behind every statistic is a child who needed protection, a family who expected safety, and a world that still needs to do better. Now I'm going to go a little bit off my written words because I have way too many words, and I have sat through all 4 of the other committee members and committee meetings, and one of my fears is that I may not get a chance to say what I need to say off script. I have submitted my words and I will resubmit them again, and so every committee member they're available for reading. Please read them because they have lots of detail and empathy and emotion in them. And so what I want to say off script is this. My daughter died in 2012 of October. As a mom and as an educator in British Columbia, I have spent my time ensuring that I understand what is going on in the world in the digital space, and my role as an advocate, a mother, and an educator is to ensure the safety of others. The safety of others include children, youth, adults, caregivers, seniors, basically anyone in the world, no matter what gender, what race, what identity that they have. This is important to me as a Canadian citizen and as an individual, because the online harms has been going on for way too long. Amanda, this started for Amanda back in 2009. We are in 2026 now, and those harms have escalated. Those harms haven't gone away. And when I stand in front of this government or a government in the United States or a government in Australia, this is what I say. What are we doing to help the kids and the citizens in our country? We worked hard, and I was in a Canadian Heritage meeting back in 2021 or 2022 in British Columbia. And the Canadian Heritage group, we were talking about online safety and online harms. And that was 4 years ago. Another bill was brought up and tabled last year or the year before. And it also died in Parliament for whatever reasons. The Online Safety Bill, the Online Harms Act, which we would like to have an Online Safety Act tabled, is of utmost importance to all of us. I am in touch with many parents who have lost children or are parent survivors of kids who have dealt with trauma due to online harms. They could not be here today, so I am here for them. I am speaking with them. I am in contact with them. And we all, as a parent collective, say out loud that we need better protections for our children, which includes making big tech responsible, which includes our government making legislation to ensure that our kids remain safe or become safe in the environment that they live in. No longer are we living in just an environment in an open space. We are living in a digital world. 98% of children have access to a mobile device and are on Wi-Fi. As an educator, I go out and I talk to parents, I teach my teachers, and I talk to the students in my school district, which is about 40,000 of them. I know what is happening out there in that world and why we need to be a voice. As I said, I went off script. I did not say my 8 pages. If I don't get a chance to speak again, please read what I have written.
Will do, Mrs. Todd. I will tell you, I don't think anyone in this country will ever forget what happened to Amanda. And I think that speaks both to her personality, which you mentioned, but also to your advocacy in all of these years. And I want to thank you for that. And next we'll turn to Maude Bonifant here in this room. And I'm sorry, I butchered the name of your university in my opening.
UQAM.
UQAM. Vous avez 5 minutes. Allez-y.
You have 5 minutes, Madam. The floor is yours. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and dear MPs, for having invited me to appear here today. Highly appreciated. So I've had a chance to listen to some of the witnesses you have heard, and you have indeed discussed in depth the practices, the means by which this harmful material is broadcast on social media. Today I would like to tell you something about my own expertise, being the economic model, the way it's designed, and how it works. I would like to underscore 4 aspects of this, the first being the importance of understanding the economic model, given that it's via economic models that we can take action. You know, we went from a model that was one of purchasing a product, to one that was purchasing a long-term service, and then a free object. So there are 3 ways in which this material is rendered free. First, publicity, millions of dollars here, and there are a number of strategies used to work on the content. Is it really publicity? Is it really advertising? Is this an influencer material? Is this influential material? And that's a problem already, picking out what's aimed at youth. And then micro-influencers. So some influencers can call people up to ask them for money, and this can be youth who give their pocket money to influencers, and the platforms can take up to 50% of this, or Rublock takes 70% of that money. And then there's the merchandisation, the monetarization of a number of reams of data. We know that this is a practice around the world, and I really want to insist on this. This is my second point, the gathering of personal data about youth people, collection of personal data. There's a good deal of that underway. We have worked on privacy conditions, protection of privacy, and mobile applications that do not respect the Quebec, Canadian, or American legislation at present. There are a number of different strategies used to collect data, including via third-party collection agencies that set in when you download what you think you're using. The risks, well, theft of personal identity as well. Long term, if we start collecting data about our children when they're young, about how they live and their habits, imagine what type of profiling you have of them later when they ask for insurance, when they try to buy a house, or get a bank loan, or even get a job. They could be turned down given that they've got a profile that's been up and running since they were children, and there's a probability that they will be treated in a biased manner without understanding why. There's also the geolocalization data being collected in a number of cases, often illegally, because we're not supposed to allow for the geolocalization of children, but there are a number of ways in which this is being done. And that data as well is shared and can be used by predators able to find out where children are, where their schools are, and use this information to approach them on social media. And what's the use of this data in the economy of data? Well, it's used to create profiles. What for? For targeted advertising. Youth are targeted more and more, and there's a good deal of pressure to ensure that they consume and buy. It's not for nothing that millions of dollars are being spent on this. It's because children and young people can be manipulated. The recommendation algorithms as well. This is something that is being discussed more openly. These algorithms are becoming more and more sophisticated, more accurate, with the consequences that we all know. You know, people winding up caught in echo chambers. In this case, one needn't even create new content. The new content is created automatically. So the risks of personalized content are really right there, and this is certainly a tendency with media, social media. There's the deep R as well, personalization, the fake material, and this really multiplies all the problems I've just mentioned that even now are not being, we have no handle on. To my mind, the use of persuasive designs and conceptions to ensure that people make more money, what is that all about? Well, there are strategies, design strategies that are chosen to influence youth. An example to keep people engaged, the ongoing scrolling. The brain isn't meant to face ongoing piles of material, but that's what's used, and that's underlying the creation of what's presented to them. And then you have, let's say, Airbnb and Uber. These are the types of models that are being used to encourage the creation of content. Youth are able to click and receive further material, and so on and so forth. Also, ensuring that people return to the platform with the changes provided and the notifications provided, the updates and so on, to ensure that youth spend money by making it easier and easier to do so. A couple of clicks and you've spent money. Also ensuring that even children watch advertisements. And here I underscore that right now there are deceptive patterns which aren't regulated. It's now possible to deceive with interfaces to get children to see or to do things that they hadn't intended to do at the outset. So the design aspect is really at issue. What is the most addictive element is also at issue. So gambling is one of these addictive behaviors, and the strategies of gambling are used on all platforms now to keep people attached. It's also kind of a gray zone between games in general and gaming and gambling. And there's also skin betting, where influencers turn up to support this practice. Among youth, there was a platform called Twitch, which banned that practice, but then that migrated to Kick, which is a platform where everything is permitted. And right now, youth and even very young children are being initiated to gambling on such platforms. So to conclude, I would like to say that social media screens have very positive effects, of course, but we need to ensure that youth and adolescents are able to benefit from that without being exposed to what's harmful. We need a framework. We need safety by design. So as of the design of these areas, they have to be safe, and we need to ensure that companies work on this. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now we will hear from Guy Rosier, Capsana. You have 5 minutes, sir. Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to appear here today. You have my document. I will very quickly go over what I have to present to you. We are not the only ones living with this situation. Countries around the world are wondering how to balance out the effects, the positive effects and the harms of the digital world. And the effects are felt not only by youth, and I will underscore that in my presentation. We are all affected by both the advantages and the disadvantage of the use of screens. Thus, it's important to step into this area and ensure that it remains respectful. And the sector, of course, is constantly adopting addiction encouraging approaches, as my colleague has just pointed out. So the 3 pages, following pages of my document provide data about the effects on health. I'm from an organization which is linked to the Montreal Cardiology Institute. We work in primary and secondary prevention. It's also important to know that youth today, at least, are fully aware of the potential harms of screen use. We're not here to blame them. There's a shared responsibility in this matter, and we'll mention that again a little later. It's also important to understand that as of 3 years, a recent study that we published in Montreal, the use times of screen times are up for all sectors of the population, not only youth. And here this is for non-work-related use. So at the bottom of page 3, you will see over 2 hours a day for leisure purposes increased across all age categories then. And it's after 2 hours that we start to see various effects on health. And the recent arrival of AI, of course, only increases the potential harms. Now, potential effects, physical, psychological, social, or educational. We can go back to that if you wish. And I wish specifically to speak to 5 recommendations that I'd like to make. First, recognize that screens are here to stay. The use of the internet has become essential to all of us, and we need to recognize that this is like a work habit, like sleep, like eating, and like physical activity. This will continue to be part of our everyday lives. What counts is learning together how to manage this new part of our lives. Parents have had to learn how to handle this, children as well. When it comes to sleeping, our parents explained to us that it was time to go to bed and time to get up in the morning and so on and so forth. So we're all now learning how to manage screen time. We've asked the Government of Canada to invest in understanding this new habit in our society, analyze it as well, given that this sector is evolving so quickly. What we said 3 years ago about online games, for example, online gaming, has changed quite a lot. Moreover, I also ask that we all take responsibility, specifically by supporting parents. Ms. Todd has given us an eloquent example. I think that parents need to be assisted, helped to play their role, given that this, according to our study of 2022, is the principal challenge faced by all families managing screen times at home. My recommendation number 3, where possible, depending on competence and jurisdiction, of course, would be to encourage educational and childcare settings to remove personal devices from places where education is a priority, socialization as well, that being schools and childcare settings. My 4th recommendation is to increase awareness of existing initiatives and tools that do exist, but they're isolated, such as something that we set up a couple recently, Pause Your Phone, which hasn't really been publicized for lack of funding. PauseYourScreen.com. This speaks to teachers, professionals, parents. There are a number of initiatives, not merely ours, of course. I would also like to ensure that we avoid demonizing screens and stigmatizing youth. I said this earlier. We need to be able to measure the impact of screens on health, society as a whole, the economy and employment, culture and identity, democracy and politics, and the environment. We need to provide guardrails in this sector, a sector that is fighting hard to avoid this around the world. We need to take control of this phenomena, the digital world, provide a framework, and render companies responsible for the effects they have, just like we do for any other product that is bought and used in our society. Thank you. Very interesting.
And I'm not sure which of you will be speaking, but collectively you have 5 minutes for opening remarks.
Good morning. Thank you to the chair and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Austin, and I'm speaking to you today as the founder and CEO of Children First Canada, advocating for the rights of 8 million children. I'm also the mother of a teenage boy whose 15 years of life have been entirely immersed in the digital age. I'm also joined by 2 brave and remarkable youth, Zachary and Josephine. And we're here with a very simple message. We do not need more studies, and we do not need to debate whether social media is a problem for children. We already know the answer. The evidence is overwhelming and consistent. Children are sexually exploited, groomed, bullied, extorted, and exposed to content that harms their mental health and development at scale every single day. These harms are foreseeable and preventable. 1,619 days have passed since the government pledged to table the Online Safety Act, and kids are still waiting. That's why we launched the Countdown for Kids, to make delay visible, measurable, and impossible to ignore. Because while Parliament studies, platforms profit, and while committees debate, kids pay the price. Every day of delay costs children something they cannot get back, a day of their childhood. We launched the Countdown for Kids in honor of children like Amanda Todd, Rehtaeh Parsons, Carson Cleland, Daniel Lintz, Harry Burke, and many more who tragically died due to online harms. Their lives were full of possibility, and their pain was preventable. We say their names because decisions that you make have real consequences. It seems painfully obvious to parents and children what the solution is, and we need your help. We are fighting against a multi-billion-dollar tech industry that opposes the Online Safety Act because their profits depend on engagement at any cost. So yes, one might reasonably ask, what chance do parents and kids really have in this David and Goliath fight? Well, I live in Alberta, and there's one thing you learn quickly here. It's that you never get between a mama bear and her cubs. And the mama bears of Canada are not going down without a fight. And I could promise you the papa bears are fighting too. But let me be very clear. There is no silver bullet. No bill will be perfect. No law will stop every harm. But perfection has never been the standard for protecting our children. Seatbelts aren't perfect. Food safety laws aren't perfect. Toy safety standards aren't perfect. Yet Parliament has acted when children's lives have been in danger. We cannot afford partisan gridlock again. So if there's one thing that all of you should agree on, it's the protection of our children. This is not about censorship. It is not about moral panic, and it is not about blaming parents or children. It is about accountability. Children cannot vote, they do not sit in cabinet, and they do not control multi-billion-dollar algorithms. So today I ask you and our Prime Minister and all members of Parliament to treat this for what it is, a crisis that's endangering the lives of Canada's children. Please table the Online Safety Act and pass it quickly. Stop asking children to wait. The time for studies is over, and it's time for action. I now pass the floor to Zachary and then Josephine.
Hello.
We don't hear you, Zachary. Try again. Maybe
You
lower
hear me
your
now?
microphone. Yes, that's better.
Yeah,
Thank
sorry,
you.
I forgot to lower my boom. Sorry. So hello everyone. Thank you so much, Sarah, for introducing us. My name is Zachary and I'm 12 years old. I'm here today not just for myself, but as a member of the Young Canadians Parliament, speaking for kids across Canada. Adults talk a lot about kids like me, but we don't get asked very often what it actually feels like to grow up online. For my generation, the internet isn't just screen time. It's where we learn, it's where we play, and it's also where we connect with our friends, maybe where we live. But it's also where kids get bullied, where we see things we were never ready for, and it's where mistakes can follow you forever. Adults always tell us to be careful online. But how can we be careful when websites are designed to keep us scrolling no matter the cost? That's not a fair fight, and it couldn't be our job to fix it. Kids don't need more studies to explain what's bad online. We're living it. It's our home. It's in our phones. And with AI everywhere, the task won't be easy. It's mind-boggling to see how fake content can be created. Like, imagine that being used against kids. So my message to this committee and to the Prime Minister is simple. Kids have waited long enough. Pass a strong online safety act. Hold companies accountable. Make safety the default, not a setting we have to implement ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Zachary. I'll be quick. My name is Josephine Maharaj. I'm 17 years old, and I'd just like to thank the chair and members of the committee for this opportunity. Social media is a system that shapes what we see, how we feel about ourselves, and how we think we're supposed to look, act, and live. Having come of age throughout the last decade, logging off is no longer a viable option for dealing with the risks that come with being online. The internet is no longer a place that we can leave. It is a cornerstone of our lives. School, work, friendships, news, and our hobbies are now largely set in the digital landscape. Current attempts to make the online world safer for children are often remedial or insufficient. They come in the wake of preventable tragedies, and they are often not extensive enough to prevent more kids from being exploited, groomed, or hurt. Thoughtful solutions can only be developed through respectful and consistent collaboration between youth and policymakers, and by holding tech companies accountable for systems designed to take advantage of those who use them. Thank you for your time.
Very well spoken witnesses we have today. Thank you. Next, we'll turn to Karen Orser from the Luna Child and Youth Advocacy Center. 5 minutes.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Karen Orser, and I'm the CEO of the Luna Child and Youth Advocacy Center located in Calgary, Alberta. And the other hat I wear is I'm the co-chair of Child and Youth Advocacy Centers of Canada. CYACs provide an integrated response to child abuse, and this means that when children experience abuse, rather than navigating complex public systems on their own, those systems come together to wrap around the child and provide coordinated care. The CYAC model was also recently recognized by the Federal Ombudsperson in the Rethinking Justice report as a best practice. It is because of the investment in the model by the Department of Justice Canada that we have nearly 50 child and youth advocacy centres in Canada, and we have also recently formed both the National Association, Child and Youth Advocacy Centres of Canada, and Kindex, the National Research and Knowledge Centre for CYACCs. We're in the early stages of developing national data collection capabilities and will soon have the capacity to provide very thorough national data on the nature and prevalence of child abuse in Canada, though today I'll be providing some more general statistics and also some information from our data at Luna. I will also state that I'm not an expert in social media. However, I'm grateful to speak with you today about how social media and technology show up in relation to child abuse cases seen at CYACs. Historically, technology-facilitated abuse was seen as something that occurred in isolation, separate from contact-based abuse. However, we are increasingly seeing crossover between online and in-person forms of harm. Because of how CYACs operate, particularly how referrals and triage occur, the cases we see involving social media and technology also include contact-based abuse. CYACs are most definitely seeing an increase in files that involve technology and social media. Last year, just over 15% of the children and youth that came to Luna had abuse experiences involving an online or image-based component. This includes luring, the taking of inappropriate images, recording of offenses, the creation, sharing, consuming of CSAM, and showing child sexual abuse materials, sextortion, or AI-generated CSAM. The demographics of kids in these files are similar to those in non-internet related cases, perhaps slightly older, and Caucasian and Black youth are represented at higher rates in image-based abuse files, whereas Indigenous youth are represented at higher rates in contact-only cases. Sexual exploitation is particularly concerning, rising from 1% in non-internet related cases to 13% in cases where there is an internet component. And today I want to highlight two areas related to technology and child abuse: the harms of access to and unintentional viewing of harmful content, and the increase and nature of technology-involved child abuse. We know that viewing and accessing harmful content, such as child sexual abuse material or adult pornography, can impact young people's normative sexual development, their understanding of sex and sexuality, and their ability to discern what's age appropriate. Exposure can normalize or desensitize children to high-risk or harmful behaviors. There's also a connection to problematic sexual behavior, or PSB. PSB refers to children 12 and under initiating sexualized behaviors that are developmentally inappropriate or potentially harmful to themselves or others. At Luna, in 2025, we saw a 40% increase in PSB cases. Viewing pornography, intentional or not, is a known risk factor for PSB. If we don't do more to keep kids from viewing harmful content online, there are significant risks. I'm sure at this point the committee is well versed on sextortion, CSAM, and AI-generated CSAM. I have included some statistics related to the alarming and rising trends in all three of these in my brief. I will share that at Luna in 2025 alone, we saw a 34% increase in files involving CSAM and also an increase in files with AI-generated CSAM. In terms of recommendations, social media and technology have significant impacts on the well-being and development of children. As they relate to child abuse and maltreatment, I would offer the following. First, strengthen collaboration and coordination between child and youth advocacy centers and child exploitation units, or ICE units. Currently, CYACs receive some cases while ICE receives many others, and we're really limited in our ability to provide coordinated and equitable services. Second, support cross-sector information sharing, support policy frameworks that enable safe, privacy-conscious information sharing between police, child protection, healthcare, and CYACs when technology intersects with child maltreatment. We need to ensure professionals receive training on emerging dynamics and provide specialized training on interviewing children about technology use, digital coercion, image sharing, and online grooming. We need to promote coordinated data collection across Canada. CYACs are working to develop a minimum data set, and consistent data will support policy development, prevention, and clear response protocols. And finally, engage with technology companies, as many have said, advocate for stronger safety features, reporting tools, and child-centric design, including minimum age enforcement and default privacy protections. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Very disturbing testimony we're hearing today. I'm sorry, did you say PSB? What does that stand for?
Sorry, problematic sexualized behaviors, PSB.
Thank you. And finally, we will turn to Amy Behrens from Shalem. I'm sorry, Amy.
Shalem.
Shalem. I knew. See, I always pronounce it wrong. Thank you. You have the floor now for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee members. Today, I'm privileged to provide testimony representing opinions and recommendations from the clinical staff at Shalem Mental Health Network. Shalem is a nonprofit agency and a member of Family Service Ontario, based in Hamilton. We provide counseling and psychotherapy services to individuals, couples, relationships, and families. We receive our clientele by self-referral, and we offer virtual and in-person services. And in Hamilton, Shalem is known for its affordability and accessibility, allowing folks of any background or means to access excellent therapy services for a fee that fits their income level, thanks to community foundations and donors. I myself am a certified music therapist and a registered psychotherapist at Shalem. Our clinical staff were all registered psychotherapists or social workers or placement interns. And so I've asked members of my team to contribute their opinions and reflections to prepare a collaborative statement today. There's a general sense from our team that the impact of social media on children, teens, and their families is substantial. We've seen benefits of social media in our clients, such as decreasing stigma by exposing kids and families to stories of mental health, or the benefit of free access to psychoeducation and mental health resources. However, there are numerous questions we're left with as clinicians. While there is growing evidence of clinical approaches and guidelines for families, the boots on the ground frameworks still need to catch up. We see families trying to make sense of whether their child's social media use is problematic and what to do about it for the sake of their development. Kids need to learn how to slow down, how to reflect, how to regulate themselves. But when kids are bombarded with content without much control to moderate the exposure, we see them trying to cope, but missing out on opportunities to practice regulation skills. Partial information or misinformation is challenging for families. We observe families struggling to make sense of the barrage of online information from sites and sources that purport to make use of empirical science, but whose methodologies miss the mark. We commonly see clients diagnosing themselves with conditions or mental illnesses that then impact their expectations for therapy and for treatment, as well as for themselves and their circles of support. We also see families doing their best to care for their children, but perhaps offering advice that's misguided based on information they gleaned from a social media source. We see gaps between parents and kids, gaps in parent awareness, parents not knowing what their kids' online activities are or not understanding the impact of unmonitored use. Conversely, we see parents who are aware and they're aware of the risks, maybe even hyper aware, but have very few guidelines for how best to protect their children in the granular decisions of each and every day. Parents generally seem sensitive to the social costs of non-use. Parents also may be struggling to limit their own social media themselves. We hear about families concerned about the amount of time spent together, such that sometimes parents may choose to use social media as the way to bond with their kids. One clinician noted they've seen families use social media to soothe neurodivergent kids and teens. So in terms of recommendations, we have the following to say. Social media conversations among families have some similarities with other arenas that parents use to model safety, sound judgment, and growing independence to their kids. However, there are unique phenomena with problematic social media use that require our attention. For example, the definitions of visibility and privacy have been rewritten. Social belonging is completely different too. How we make friends, belong in community, repair conflicts. Content sticks. It's hard to erase. And for some, the audience is not forgiving. A tweet or an Insta post are hypervisible, collapse the context of what's happening, blur boundaries, and require constant management to broker the perceptions of the story being told. Families need to learn how to have open conversations about these things and how to guide their children appropriately. We need more clear guidelines for the continuum between use and non-use. Longitudinal studies would be ideal to compare the long-term impacts for young people over time. There could be real costs, those have been spoken to today, to a young person's activities, especially in cases of abuse, cyberbullying, body image, depression, etc. However, social media platforms are also what adults use for employment opportunities, professional networking, and therefore non-use for teens may impact future employment if total non-use is what we're advising. So helping parents, teachers, and therapists who are guiding these kids to moderate use or any disconnective practices would be most welcome. We need all the players to take responsibility for protecting our young people. Social media is among one of many factors that are disrupting sleep, shortening attention spans, limiting in-person social skills, worsening anxiety, developing dependence habits, perpetuating bullying behaviors, body image concerns, and negative social comparisons. We need prevention and education from multiple sources. Families need help, parents need support, research needs to be translated into bite-sized pieces for the average Canadian parent to use today. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now turn to questions from members of this committee, starting with 6 minutes pour Bernard Généreux. Vous avez le plancher. Est-ce qu'on dit ça?
You have the floor. Yes, indeed, you have the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all our witnesses. Truly very interesting. Mr. Desrosiers and Ms. Bonenfant, I shall begin with you. I will soon be 70 years of age, and I remember that when I was 5, 6, 8 years of age, I would watch Bobino and Bobinette, very simple children's shows on TV. And now what we see on the screens in terms of screen time, I remember that I would spend, from 4 in the afternoon until 6 in the afternoon, coming back from school and before dinner. Now you're speaking of leisure use. Right now people use screens. Back then it was this black and white television screen. Eventually it became a color screen. And we did spend time, leisure time, before the TV. Right now, they're really big screens, TV screens, 80 inches wide. But look, back to time, I'm speaking to leisure time. I think that your organization also speaks of well-being, mental health, physical health. But look, if you're sitting in front of a screen, you're not moving, are you? So screen time 50 years ago or 60 years ago compared to screen time today, you've given us figures, an average of 2 hours of screen time, generally speaking, not necessarily specifically for children, but for the population overall. So turning to the quality of what is now found on these screens, the content compared to what we had in the past, and of course it can be much more threatening than what we used to watch in the past. Let's be clear on that. Now, all this content makes a difference in people's lives. It affects people's lives. Do you see a link between screen time itself and the content interface, the difference there in content? And I put this question to both of you. I think that you have collaborated on some of your work. Now, the content, back then, Bobino and Bobinette, these simple children's shows that I watched, not the same as what children are watching today. Thank you for the question. Now, perhaps you've seen TVs a bit like mine. My father had a television, ensconced in a large armoire. I couldn't bring it to the bathroom. I couldn't drag it into my bedroom, nor could I take it outdoors to pretend that I was playing soccer, sit in a corner watching this screen of a soccer game and continuing to play on my screen doing other things as well. Multitasking. So, of course, right now the strategies, both overt and hidden, are very different from what we watched as children. Now, at page 3, on the subtitle at the top, I discuss 3 elements related to screen time, meaning that one must make use of data about the time, the use, and the types of material being watched or consulted. Now, combining all 3 of those elements, we're able to see what the potential benefits and the potential harms of use are. Of course, I mentioned time, given that many studies cover screen time. And when we look at the study that was published in Montreal about the potential harm, comparing 2 hours to 4 hours of screen time, because often that's time that you've borrowed from your sleep time, from physical activity, from just getting outdoors in the fresh air. And when you double your screen time, when it comes to insufficient sleep, about half of youth now state that they aren't sleeping enough. And life satisfaction scores as well. Dissatisfaction with your life goes from 24 goes up to 24% when you spend more than 4 hours a day on screen. Now, of course, when you carry out a study, you need some sort of a measurable data point, and time is one of those. Ms. Bonafont, would you like to add something? Yes, I will add that when you were watching the shows you watched when you were young, the rhythm of those shows was very slow, measured, and you sat at a distance from the screen. Right now, the images are accelerated, youth and adolescents are overstimulated. That's a big difference. Moreover, right now, people are in an interactive world. The strategies are to make the youth do something, to click, to make decisions, and so on, and especially to ensure that they watch the advertising. And there's a great deal of advertising in social media, even if children aren't aware of this. With the phenomena of unboxing, for example, they watch other youth unbox products. They think they're just watching something cute, but it is advertising. These are the elements that interfere with healthy youth development. Now, we know that there are many schools which ban the use of in schools. And I think this has been well received, generally speaking. Even youth appreciate this ban. They realize that they now speak more to each other. For example, so human interaction counts. The testimony we've heard today certainly shows that we can ensure that changes come to pass that respect privacy, that still respect youth's ability to use the internet. Do you think that this should be applied across Canada, this sort of principle? This is a Quebec practice to ban phones in schools. Yes, that's one of my recommendations for childcare settings and for school settings. It's not normal that in a childcare setting a child be passively exposed to a video for a full hour's time just to keep them quiet. With no involvement of the child, no stimulation of their development. So this is an important recommendation, I think. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Al-Sood, you have 6 minutes.
For being with us today. I want to start with a conversation that I had shortly before we came back to the House with a parent in my riding. And we landed on the following. It's about ensuring that when young people do enter these spaces, they're ready for it. And I leave this question open to anyone who'd like to jump in here, but Ms. Behrens, I noted that you mentioned the importance of regulation skills, for instance. What does it mean for young people to access these spaces when they're ready? What do you think is essential for that readiness element?
For the regulation, you mean specifically?
Yes.
Well, there's a lot to do with your sensory stimulus, right? And so it's nearly impossible to pay attention to what's going on inside of you if what's around you is pinging at your brain at a rate that's far too high to pay attention to. And so while this isn't really my I don't research this, but what I see is that kids have a really hard time turning inwards, right? And because there's just so much stimulation in their environments. And even when they get home, it doesn't stop. Like when I went to school, you went home and that was it. I mean, if someone called you, maybe, but it just never stops. There's not that same element of privacy.
And does this question of readiness in terms of access to social media, is it the same for everyone here, for all of our witnesses? I see Ms. Orser with her hand up and Ms. Austin.
Sure, I would just add, I think it's really important that we don't put all of the responsibility on kids and parents in terms of readiness. We just really have to recognize the reality of brain development in adolescent children and the impact of that on impulsivity, decision-making. We see files at Luna on a regular basis where particularly young boys have been asked to send a picture, and it is a matter of seconds before they are asked and sent that picture that then has very lifelong, huge consequences. So I think we have to really consider brain development before we put the responsibility for kids and parents to be ready and focus on access to those images.
And Ms. Austin?
Yes, to echo what Karen has just spoken to, I mean, there is an element of this around brain development, but even adults who have fully developed brains should not be exposed to much of the harmful content that we see every single day. And really, there is a significant onus that needs to be put on the tech industry in terms of protection by default and a duty of care to all Canadians, but particularly to our children and youth. We are seeing daily now kids being exposed to extremely graphic content, online hate, sexual content. We could go on and on. You've heard the testimonies from countless witnesses around this. And so, as Karen has spoken to, and I echo again, we need to take the burden off of children and off of parents and put it back onto the tech platforms and hold them accountable.
Thank you all. On this note, actually, of an onus on the tech industry, we've heard this severally over the course of this study. Mr. Desrosiers said it already, actually, about the idea of countries deciding to move forward with a minimum age requirement for social media. I've heard it from parents in my riding, several witnesses here in committee, that we should be considering the same. Meanwhile, others, and I will use the term others here loosely, have indicated that age-appropriate design on social media is a possibility. So I think they refer to it as graduated access. What do you make of the idea of social media platforms' attempts of creating safer spaces for children? Is there a world where this sufficiently protects children in online environments?
Si je peux me permettre de répondre.
Oui.
If I may provide an answer, yes, please do. I think that if we really focus on safety by design, then upstream we would have to, think through how these platforms are developed. They be science-based, based on stages of development of children and adolescents, with respect for their private lives, with parameters like that. Banning certain practices, such as certain uses with generative AI, for example. Then we could create spaces that are healthy for children, something like schoolyards, areas that have to do with education, where they can share among themselves, discuss matters, learn, where it's safe. And if guardrails are provided and the whole thing is framed, if we don't leave them there day in and day out, for example, and that they have gradual access to this material. I work on video games, and I encourage, as of the age of 3, use of a tablet, playing for 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a game that's age appropriate, and then put aside the tablet and take out, the crayons, paper, something more tactical. Thus, the child learns that this is one activity among others in its environment, not something that's highly desirable because it's there all the time, or it is banned in the household. But we need to take action for this, because right now the sector is making millions of dollars at the expense of our children's health. If there isn't legislation, some sort of framework that really orients how we design platforms, then we're not going to make it with the current platforms that are being used. That's why Australia stepped in so seriously.
Ms. Todd?
Ms. Todd, can you hear us?
I want to speak to a social media restriction or ban that Canada and the other countries have talked about. And it is, this is my opinion, and my opinion only, is that we need to, if we're going to encourage and create a social media restriction ban in Canada, we have to ensure that there are safety designs to monitor it, to oversee it. And so oversight is a big part of when the government brings in an Online Safety Act. Because if we don't, who is going to oversee that things are being done properly with the tech industry? And I just want every member of the committee to go Google search after this and look up the lawsuit, the trial that's happening in Los Angeles in the United States right now. And that is about digital oversight with the social media companies and what they are and aren't doing. And what they aren't doing is putting in protections for children. I also want to clarify that there is a big difference. In BC, we have a cell phone restriction in our schools, in each and every school, but it can be interpreted differently. There is a big difference between recreational versus educational screen time. And many parents that I talk to say, well, what about kids are using laptops to do their inquiry? And it's a life skill to learn how to research. It's a life skill how to learn how to emit information in a good way, because when they're young adults and they're out in the workforce or they're in post-secondary education, that is of utmost importance.
Thank you, Ms. Dodd. We've run out of time for this question. I apologize for cutting you off. Je vais tourner à Mr. Champoux pour 6 minutes.
I now turn to Mr. Champoux. You have 6 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to our witnesses for having joined us here today. You know, when we began this study, we all had some preconceived ideas. We all had our opinions about screens and influencers and social networks and the effect of all this on youth. As we have heard witnesses and studied the matter, our opinions have changed. And seeing you both, Ms. Desrosiers, Mr. Bonenfant, Madame Bonenfant as well, Mr. Desrosiers, I see that you were very helpful here with our testimony. You're not attacking anyone or shaming anyone. I see that the approach now is very encouraging, very positive. We know that we need to deal with screen time, with this new universe, and we feel that you're not here to put pressure on us in a strict manner, but rather to help us understand that these tools, which are of use to us, not merely negative, nevertheless need to be better framed. I've heard other witnesses say this. Social networks aren't merely negative. There is a way to make good, positive use of them. And your site, Mr. Desrosiers, Pose ton écran, put your screen down. It's very interesting that I suggest everyone go and consult that site. It's a totally different approach, a new discourse, and this is very refreshing, very encouraging. But there's a good deal of resistance, a lot of calls for full boycotting, for rigid approaches, and I'm wondering, is that a good approach? And you seem to be saying no, that we need to work in a progressive manner. We do need guidelines. We do need education. We need to remain vigilant. I would like to hear you a bit on this sort of global movement which tends more towards full banning of the use of the social networks. Australia, anyone under 15, and in France, 130 versus 21. That's the vote to ban the use of social media by youth. Is this the right way to go? As Ms. Barons was saying, aren't we depriving ourselves of a way to encourage digital literacy, to teach youth how to use this new universe? I'd like to hear you on this. In my organization, with my colleagues, my committee of experts, my working group on this topic, we tend to prefer self-control as a method. And, of course, that's a step-by-step process depending on the stage of development of the child. And we work with families suggesting guidelines. If you have 3 children, you'll say, no, our second child is different from the first, and the third is even more different. And that being the case, we encourage people to understand the phenomena in depth so that they can take appropriate action. Same for youth. We have a youth committee. We talk to youth. We study them. And youth tell us, I'm fully aware of the situation and the issues, but I have trouble. The solution is very attractive. Maud has mentioned this. The business model is to throw millions into making everything more and more attractive. And they're always on their screens. Yet, as they say, people are telling them to get off their screens. And this is the situation. It's kind of a logjam. We all need to step in. It has to be a social approach. These screens are here to stay. In countries where there are bans, and already for social media, it's 16 years and younger are banned, but, 11-year-olds are already using the Internet. And all I can say is that if we don't control this sector, the companies themselves put some guardrails up, they'll control us. So we need to work out healthy lifestyles involving screens, like we have for other parts of our lifestyle. And that doesn't involve pointing and saying, this is what you should do, this is good for you, but rather explaining and encouraging. We need to ensure balance. I mentioned the Physiology and Exercise Institute of Canada that mentions, of course, how screen time affects bodily health. Thank you for referring to that, because there is a movement in France which was really based on something that a Quebec citizen suggested, getting off the screen for 24 hours in a row and seeing what happened. Now the concept is to stay off your screens for 10 full days in a row. Now, if I go home and tell my children, 10 days off your screens, they'll kill me. No, the studies are very clear that that approach never works long term. But taking a break in order to think things through, our initiative indeed is called a break, pause. That's a good challenge. 24 hours, a full day without using your screen, to be able to really notice how much room screens are taking in our lives right now. 24 hours maybe, 10 days not, at least not in my household. But are we able now to show that there are real effects on physical health, for example? Has that been proven? We know there are psychological and mental effects that we can feel and see ourselves, but how about the physical state of youth today? Is that linked to the use of screens? Yes, there are some very good studies about sedentary behavior. I've mentioned the effect on sleep. There's really a triad, basically. Remaining sedentary, not sleeping, and obesity. Myopia, for example, vision, the drying of the eye, dry eyes, which has an effect long-term on someone's vision. The muscular issues, neck, shoulder pain. There are more and more studies carried out on all these effects. It's not causal directly. These are links. These are correlations. There is a study, though, that I suggest you consult, carried out in Austria, about screen time, carried out by a university team. 2 hours of screen time versus 4 hours of screen time, a big difference. Thank you very much.
Minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, everyone, to our committee. We've studied this in Parliament to death. We started in 2022. We continued with 2023, 24, 25. We keep going around in circles. I don't know it's because the Liberal government in Parliament has done nothing, or, we've studied this now for 5 years. And we've had this in Heritage Committee twice in the years that I've been here. We've made no progress. Let's be honest with this. We've made absolutely no progress at all federally with any policy. You've all agreed to come here today, and I thank you for that. And I personally don't know if your submissions today will go up on a shelf and we'll never see this again. I'm honest with this, because when you see studies go to status of women, to heritage, other committees, and then nothing is being done, right? We just study the same thing over and over. It's frustrating as a parent. It's frustrating as a parent to grandkids. And then we hear this testimony. And Sarah, thank you for sharing Countdown for Kids. Zach, I'm going to ask you, because you're 12 years old. So let's talk about your screen time, how you're dealing with it. Thank you for coming and sharing your story today, but you're 12 years old. And there are other studies that have been done, and we've mentioned the 14 years and under that would not be able to have screen time. I just want to know your thoughts on that. Since you're 12, when did you pick up the phone or internet? And I just would like to know from a 12-year-old your experiences, if you don't mind.
Okay, so, well, as you asked me, I got my phone at 12. So you said ban under 14. Am I right?
That's what the rumors are, yes?
So, I think, well, I don't think a ban would really work because kids can find workarounds. And if you ban, like, they'll probably protest one. And two, I don't think they'll go outside. They'll just like sleep all day, probably skip school. But you should find like how do I say this? A regulation so that kids don't like stay on their screens that much. I don't know how to explain it.
Well, you're just on. You just said you're online at the age of 12. You're 12 now. So can I ask you what support systems you do have to see if you do see something that you're maybe somewhat uncomfortable with? What do you do then? What kind of support systems do you have, Zach?
What do you mean by support systems?
If you see something, you're just on for the first time here this year, and if you see something on your screen that you say, I'm not comfortable with that, do you go to your parent or parents, or who do you go to when you do see something that you're uncomfortable with, or kind of say, I'm not sure about this? What do you do then?
Usually I go to my parents, but also, or else I'll just skip what I saw or I report it.
Who do you report it to?
The website that I'm on. So, for example, I'm on YouTube. I see something that makes me uncomfortable. I would report it. If I find that it would be uncomfortable for people also around my age too.
Do you ever hear back from them once you do report something, or have you reported something?
I have reported something.
Have they got back to you?
What do you mean? Like, have they like reported me back?
Yeah, have they got back to you on your report that something that you were uncomfortable with seeing? So you said, yeah, go ahead. You just said you reported it. Has the organization got back to you?
Usually they email me back. Yeah, they've emailed me back. Yes.
And what do they say? Can you share that? I would like to know what the email said.
YouTube says, thank you for reporting this. We'll evaluate it, blah, blah, blah. And then it says, thank you, and then your name. So, Zachary.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think us around the table have the feeling when you do report something, it goes into a hole and it never comes back. Or what do they do about it? So that is part of this Online Harms Act that needs to be really concentrated on. You've shared some of that. I'm going to go
Thank you, Mr. Roy. Your time
I'm done?
is up.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Sonia Sidhu, welcome to Heritage Committee. It's lovely to see you here today. You now have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, all the witnesses, for your insightful testimony. My heart goes out to all the kids who tragically died because of the online harms. And Ms. Todd, thank you for your advocacy. I know we met in Status of Women, but I really want to say thank you, what you are doing as a mom, as educator. My question is to you, when you're talking about the tech need, social media, tech company needs responsibility, and you talked about the BC. In BC schools, they have restrictions on kids' cell phones. So what do you think, what need to be done? Do you think this restriction is important? If it is important, what age, what need to be done on that side?
Well, the restriction in British Columbia goes from K to 12 schools, and it's based on personal mobile devices. And so in my school district, which is the third largest school district in BC, our elementary and middle schools, it's bell to bell, and kids are not to bring in their devices. They need to be in the lockers or at home. And saying that, you'll say, well, what about, kids in elementary grades 4 and 5? They shouldn't have devices, but the number of children 8 and above who actually have a mobile device that they call for personal use is up to about 62%. And so the numbers are rising. Kids are getting them at early ages. And in high school, teaching digital literacy, all our schools in my school district have a digital literacy class for grade 9s, and we teach them about cyber abusive behaviors, restricting the social, emotional, the physiological, all that stuff, to put it into their heads. My role is to educate teachers and parents in this. I think it's a good thing to have. And I just want to clarify that when Australia has a social media ban, it's not restricting kids from using screen time at all. It's only 10 applications. Some of the applications are still communication apps that are allowed, and those are the ones that create that cyberbullying effect, that predatory effect of predators out there. And so that's why we really need to look at the what social media is. It's not a restriction of devices for all children under 14 or in Australia under 16. It's only 10 applications. And so I just wanted to clarify that. Sorry for taking your time to do that.
Thank you. And my next question is to Ms. Orser, Luna Child and Youth Advocacy Center. Thank you for running the 50 Child Center. And my question is about the national data. How do social media platforms presently collect and use data from children? And what risk does this pose to their well-being and for their privacy?
I'm not sure I'll be able to answer this question because the national data set I'm referring to is that 50 child and youth advocacy centers have created a minimum data set. So related to what we see at child advocacy centers and child abuse. So not related to how technology companies are actually collecting and using child data. I'm referring to how we hope to be able to collect more national data around prevalence of child abuse.
But my next question is that in perspective of a child and youth advocacy center, how is social media, including influencer content, contributed to cases of exploitation or emotional harm among children?
Yeah. And happy to provide more details, but we are definitely seeing significantly more files every year at CACs that involve online components, involve CSAM, involve cyberbullying, involve, and especially crossover between contact that is made through applications that then lead to in-person abuse in person. So these are disturbing trends for child advocacy centers.
Thank you. My next question is to Shalom Mental Health Network. Ms. Berners, from a clinical perspective, what mental health patterns are you seeing they are connecting to social media influencers, or particularly regarding anxiety, depression, or body image?
Well, we don't collect that data here at Shalem, and there's several reasons for that. But I do know that we have so much research about this. So there are numbers that exist, but I can't provide them from Shalem. And I think what we're concerned around is more, could we have something? Could we have some policy, some legislation, something that reduces harm? Any kind of harm reduction would be welcome.
Thank you. Et Monsieur Champoux, vous avez la parole maintenant pour 2 minutes.
You have 2.5 minutes, Mr. Champoux. Very well, I shall be swift. Mr. Desrosiers, in one of your recommendations, being to better structure the sector, well, that's something that many have tried to do so far with very limited success, not merely in Quebec and across Canada, but around the world, even though this will become essential. But how can we do this? How can we legislate when these very influential and powerful governments, even influential in their interactions with government? Let's consider what's going on in the United States. How could we legislate them? I think that we need to try to work with countries or areas that have already undertaken this work. The EU, for example, which has established some relatively useful approaches. Australia is in the forefront in this effort. We can see, of course, that it's not easy to do. We have seen that There have been some bans enacted on certain media. And also, let's not forget artificial intelligence. I invite you to check Loisiro, a world initiative. I think we need to work together because we won't be able to face down these giants all alone. That's my opinion, too. I don't quite agree with what my colleague Mr. Waugh was saying earlier to the effect that studies carried out here have no effect. Some of our initiatives, legislative initiatives, have, yes, indeed, died on the order paper, but nevertheless, we have moved far too slowly in this area. This was predictable. We knew this was coming down the pipeline, this serious issue. Do we still have time? Can we remain optimistic? Difficult to know. Is it still possible to take action? Should we really bring in very severe bans until we're able to better control the situation? What should we do? And with what set of steps? We do need to bring in legislation. We can no longer allow companies to continue behaving as they are. We've seen the effects. Right now, we have sufficient knowledge to take very specific action, yes, by restricting how much money they can make. Yes, they've made millions of dollars on our youth, but without necessarily collapsing that economic sector either. We could certainly set in guidelines to restrict certain practices, and a number of results, data could help us do that. We know how the design is structured, how the algorithm is used, what type of access is given to youth. We could act on all these factors, and companies could continue to work under a certain economic model, but with harm reduction built into it. We were speaking of full restriction earlier, but right now I think that really it's not up to youth, to individuals to react. They are reacting, but we need to take action on the companies themselves. Thank you. Mr. Diop.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to everyone for being here. I'm losing my voice, so hopefully I can last the 5 minutes here. So we're hearing about the effects of influencers and social media on children. And, you know, we've heard about the bullying, which is horrific, the graphic porn, sextortion. We've heard some terrible, terrible things. We know that this has been studied to death. It's been, I believe, more than 1,600 days since the Online Harms Act was first debated. So turning to immediate solutions, I wanted to get something from everyone on what should big tech be doing today to stop harms to children. And maybe I could just, we could start with Amy Behrens, and then anybody else who wanted to weigh in on that would be most welcome.
I really feel this is outside my purview, so I'm going to let someone else answer.
Well, what we could do, in brief, would be to intervene on some elements of the setup. Anything that's potentially addictive, we could certainly take action on that, on the design that's addictive, and also the deceptive patterns that I mentioned earlier. They should be regulated to really be banned. And we could also take action on the basis of databases. If the images come up, it's because they are in databases. There would be a way to bring in guidelines that would have an effect on the algorithm and the database, affecting the content that is available to project. We could also get involved at the level of the networks, linking people, linking youth. There again, bringing in some barriers to reduce some practices, but also the promotional content. There are some efforts being made to restrict that, but we could work with greater muscle there, greater effect. And so there are a number of measures that can be used. Mr. Desrosiers mentioned Europe, and Europe has brought in some regulations that could be useful to us and that are now being applied. And if around the world we are all working to regulate these companies, then they will have no choice. They will have to respect legislation, even if it's only the protection of privacy.
Thank you. We have spent 2 decades hoping that the tech industry would do the right thing, and they have proven themselves to be untrustworthy. They are not going to do this as a voluntary effort. Currently in the United States, there are major lawsuits against all of the major tech platforms. Carol Todd and other families in Canada are part of that, and it's clear that the tech industry will not do this voluntarily. It requires legislation imposing strict regulations on them to act and do the right thing for our children and for all Canadians. We have recommended several key elements of the Online Safety Act that would be including a duty of care with clear enforceable obligations on platforms to prevent foreseeable harms to children. It includes independent public oversight so that there's a strong independent regulator that has real enforcement powers and the technical capacity with transparency and authority. We recommend the importance of youth protections by design. We need age-appropriate design with limits on addictive features, meaningful defaults for minors, and safeguards for AI-enabled abuse. There is a critical element around data access for public interest research so that Canada can actually measure the harms and enforce compliance. And last but certainly not least, we want to see AI systems in scope. We can't simply regulate social media. We need to look at AI systems and the whole digital landscape in which children are living and ensure that there is accountability for AI systems, whether they be chatbots or other functions that are exploiting and harming our children.
Thank you. Anyone else care to wade in? Some very good testimony. Ms. Todd, perhaps?
Okay, I can talk. I can always talk. These social media platforms, big tech, and it's a business model for them. They have algorithms that grab our kids, and not only our kids, they grab adults. How many times have you seen adults that can scroll endlessly? Well, if you look at brain science and you look at the neuroplasticity of the brain, everything that we see and watch, it embeds into our brains and we can't unsee it. And so these things, what our kids are seeing is it harms them in some ways. I teach technology. I am not anti-technology. I feel that we need some regulations in place and to ensure safety. And for the same reason that we have regulations in place for safety in vehicles, the same reason we have CSA-approved items that we use in our homes, the same reason that we watch as parents and grandparents, we make sure the playground is safe for our kids. That digital playground doesn't have the oversight that is needed to keep our kids safe right now. And that's why I am imploring our government, and I do not want our testimonies to be shelved. This is my 5th standing committee. I have probably met some of you in other standing committees that I've spoken to. And each time I say, please create action. And we're not creating action. We're creating words. We're creating briefs. We're creating something that is stored somewhere. This is the time right now with this committee. We need something done, because if we don't do something, we are going to lose more Canadian kids, more Canadian youth, and more Canadian young adults to online harms.
Thank you. Ms. Royer, you now have the floor for 5 minutes.
Chair, we have an extraordinary panel here today, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging the profound loss, Carol, of your daughter, Amanda. And I think it was just shortly after her 15th birthday, and it happened in our community. And I know that the community has grieved Amanda's tragic death at the time, but for many, many years. So I really want to recognize your courage. You have turned this profound loss into advocacy and education. And given that you are an educator in School District 43, Coquitlam School District, you are supporting kids. Can you talk a little bit about what might be more tools for prevention that we can implement. I just like to really explore that with you, and you have 4 minutes if you need. Thank you.
Okay. In this whole space, we've talked about restrictions, we've talked about bans, we've talked about big tech, what they can do, but that's not enough. We also need education, we need awareness, we need to talk to our parents, our caregivers, our children, our students, and it needs to be ongoing. I have walked into classrooms in various parts of Canada, and teachers have gone, well, do I only have to teach this for a week? No. Online safety, the digital world, whatever comes about, needs to be taught the 10 months of the school year. And I have to say, sometimes we say, well, it shouldn't be the parents' responsibility, but parents need to be aware and educated also so they can have those conversations with their children, whether it's over the dinner table, whether it's in the car as you're going to play to a soccer practice, or whether it's sitting on the couch and co-viewing, which is becoming more popular. We are also creating an analog generation out there. I've heard of so many young people that have said, I am taking a break from screen time because basically they're tired of it. But we have the 13, 14, 15-year-olds who aren't tired of it because it's new. And that's why I worry that if there is a ban or a restriction or whatever we want to call it, I don't want that ban or restriction to say to a population of people, we don't have to teach this anymore because kids don't have access to it. We still have to teach because it is part of the dialogue. It is part. We don't throw a child into a swimming pool without swimming lessons. You don't give the keys to the car to your kids unless they have driving lessons. We need to ensure that our kids know the rules, know how to play safe, and most importantly, know where to go if they need help. So many kids, teenagers, young people, if something's going wrong, they internalize it. They don't want it. I want to say to this committee, were you aware of this? And I just became aware of this last fall. Public Safety Canada has an interactive roadshow on online dangers where it's interactive with kids. And there are models of technology where it shows videos and they can interact with the screens and talk. It's for groups of 30 kids in schools. And right now it's in Ottawa. They're going to be presenting to Ottawa some from French-speaking schools. I would implore, and I have a contact if someone wants to contact me, to contact someone at Public Safety to be able to see this. Now, my problem with this is that there's so much money that has been put into making this interactive roadshow. It was only in BC for 8 weeks last fall. Previous to that, it was only in Nova Scotia for 8 weeks. And I asked Public Safety, so where is it the rest of the time? And it's stored in a warehouse. This is a prevention tool that I declare awesome. It's excellent. It's a learning place. And it should be in every province so that kids can see. They touch on cyberbullying, they touch on online safety, they touch on exploitation, they touch on sextortion. These are what we want to teach our kids about. But we have a hard time teaching them because it's such a complicated conversation to have. I have not met many teachers or parents that are comfortable with that topic and conversation about human trafficking, exploitation, or sextortion. But our kids know. Our kids don't know about it, but they should know about it. And they need to know about it in a language that is clear and simple. I think I've used my 4 minutes. Thank you, MP Royer.
Exactly 4 minutes, right on the mark, and it's always valuable to hear from you, Ms. Todd. I will turn now to Mrs. Thomas for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you so much to everyone for taking the time to be with us here today. My first question is going to go to Sarah. Sarah, one of the things that you have talked about is previous legislation that was brought forward, Bill C-63, and you've outlined a few concerns that you have with that legislation. Now, of course, it's not on the table anymore. It died when we went into an election last spring, However, the government is now talking about bringing forward future legislation. Now, there were a number of criticisms against Bill C-63, and then there were a number of really great things about Bill C-63. And so as the government looks to put legislation in place, I'm curious if you would wish to highlight the things that absolutely need to be a part of that legislation, and then the things that absolutely need to be left out of that legislation or done differently.
Thank you, MP Thomas, for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for your ongoing support and commitment to amplifying the voices of children and youth and to protecting our children. I think Children First Canada has joined forces with many leading experts, the Canadian Medical Association, Canadian Pediatrics Association, children's hospitals like Sick Kids, CHEO, McMaster Children's Hospital, on, tech experts, mental health experts. We all agree about the importance of an Online Safety Act, that a social media ban alone will not solve this problem. We need robust legislation. What worked in Bill 63 that was tabled last year, the important elements of that were a duty of care, the clear enforceable obligations on platforms to prevent foreseeable harms. It included important elements about an independent public oversight, an independent regulator with real enforcement powers and the technical capacity and transparency and authority. Those are important elements that must continue in a new bill that gets tabled. I've spoken already
I'm sorry to interrupt. The translators are having a little bit of difficulty, Ms. Austin. Would you mind lowering your boom?
Slow down.
Lower your boom a little bit and slow down a little bit.
All right, thank you.
I'll give you a little bit of extra time to do that.
Thank you. Other important elements are around the youth protections by design, age-appropriate design elements, limiting addictive features, meaningful defaults for minors, and safeguards for AI-enabled abuse. These are some really important elements. What was missing in the previous bill was around the AI systems. We've seen so much emerge in recent months, even recent weeks, around AI-fueled harms for children, and so that really is an important aspect that be captured in a new bill that is tabled. There were controversial aspects of the previous bill, particularly around concerns around limiting free speech. And so, obviously that needs to go by the wayside. We need to drop what didn't work or what raised significant concerns and really focus on what's most important. And again, I plead with all members of Parliament, whatever your political stripes may be, we need to work together. We need the best and brightest minds working together. We've seen, MPs from all federal parties attempt to bring forward bills. MP Rempel tabled her own legislation, and we need everybody working together, really with the best interests of our children at heart, and to find a solution that works for all Canadians.
Thank you. Sorry, I know that was a lot to rattle off. I really appreciate that, though. I think that's very helpful as we move forward and consider what to do with the hearings of this report. One of the other things that you've made comments on is with regards to the recent developments concerning X and the use of Gawk, the impact that has had on all people who have been, impacted by a misuse of this AI tool. And then in particular, there's a vulnerability to children. Would you care to comment on what you're observing there?
Yeah, we've seen, in recent weeks, the real escalation of AI-enabled harms. Grok has been a most notable example where we've seen X being used as a platform to amplify harms, particularly against women and children, and where that went on for far too long before and where there was where the company was profiting off of that. I mean, it's egregious harm, and where our government did not take a clear position. We saw governments, the UK and otherwise, stepping up and really taking clear positions on that. We need Canada to be a leader and not a laggard in this space. And when we think about AI, it's not just on social media platforms. It's not just on X. Grok is in Tesla cars. And we've seen examples of this where kids are sitting in their family vehicle and engaging with Grok, which is automatically uploaded to the Tesla car, and where kids have been harmed. Grok is prompting kids to share nudes, for crying out loud. I mean, it's absurd, the level of harm that our kids are being exposed to. So we cannot look at regulating this simply for social media. We need to look at the whole digital landscape that our kids are exposed to, sitting in their family vehicles, on their school laptops, on their phones, on every digital device that they're exposed to. We need comprehensive legislation that looks at the full landscape. And so we really urge Canada to go above and beyond what Australia and France have done and really table a robust Online Safety Act that protects children and protects all Canadians.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah.
I did not know that was happening in cars. Thank you. Mr. Miles, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the witnesses that are here today. Fascinating, really important discussion. MP Thomas scooped my question, and it was a great question. I was wondering, kind of the previous online harms bill, I was looking for kind of thoughts on where that might have fallen short. I didn't realize there was as much unanimous support for that bill as there appears to be in the room. So I agree that it does seem to have a place to come back. I guess I just wanted to frame the conversation a bit because it does seem each of us are talking about different levels of responsibility, one being a heavy-handed responsibility of the government to say a ban of social media. And I think, as Carol Todd mentioned, it's important to notify the difference between being online and being on social media. We are talking about a different thing when we're talking about a social media ban. And then the responsibility of the social media companies creating a safety by design, and then the other part being the responsibility of parents and kids and healthy habits. I think we're all coming at this from different angles, but realistically, what I'm hearing is they can't happen in isolation. They have to, healthy habits by themselves and education isn't going to cut it because the algorithm itself needs to be adjusted. There needs to be safety by design. So I guess, first of all, I just wanted to talk to Zachary for a second because, first of all, well done for being here. I was not at your level at 12 years old. I will say I'm very impressed. Yeah, I'm getting there. That's a very good point. I'm catching up to Zachary to do small. But I just wanted to talk to you just about, because you had mentioned this idea of just making this say that you know these spaces. You know where the problems are and what safety, let's say safety by design looks like for you. How can you interact with these platforms? Are you interacting with social media or is it just online platforms? And what responsibility looks like in that way?
So basically, if I understand well, you basically asking me what social medias I use, basically, yes?
Yeah, and I just think at one point you said make safety the default, which I thought was a really, really good point. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so what I mean by make safety the default is that online platforms shouldn't have to you shouldn't have to be able to find workarounds so that you can be safe online. You have to when you're online, you want the first thing in your mind when you're building a website actually, for it to be like, are kids or are people in general are they going to be safe? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I appreciate that because I think it's kind of what we were talking about is this, it becomes the responsibility of those creating these platforms to create a space that is inherently safe for kids to engage with if they're going to be allowed to engage with them. Do you have social media as well?
Yeah, but I only use YouTube and, my email is on Gmail. Yeah, that's it.
So thank you very much. It's great to have you here. I guess I just wondered, maybe Maud, you can speak to the kind of the three elements to this, because we have talked about les habitudes saines, tout ça. Mais je me demande
We've spoken of healthy habits and so forth, but I'm wondering how we could regulate the three important factors. Well, we do know that regulation is required because we've let the sector do as it wishes, and it's not working. The sector itself, as of the time when regulation would be applied, it would be applied to all companies. So all platforms, one would hope, would respect the regulations. Otherwise, they'd be face lawsuits, which we have already seen now for the breach and violation of a number of laws that have been applied, and then ensuring that safety is they're by design based on the age of use. Let's say you've got Instagram. You might have Instagram for youth, but you'd have to ensure that the configuration of that Instagram truly make that a safe space for young people. For example, with by design configurations, right now they're totally open spaces, but if we could teach youth to go step by step through the various levels of design, that would be very helpful, and they would learn how to do it. Right now, youth understand, they feel it emotionally and physically that there's something not working, something not quite right. They're in a world where they're certainly responding the way they companies hope they will, namely remaining engaged and really stuck to the screen, but adults are unable to help them. And Zachary is correct. It's quite brilliant what he said. We need to listen to him. And there are organizations working in the field. We've got Le Ciel in Quebec that goes into schools to listen to youth, to hear what youth have to say about this problem. There is education underway, but bidirectional. Adults as well are starting to learn about what's going on, such that together we can build up a proper lifestyle around the screen, how to interact with screens healthily, and social media as well, to really take advantage of the advantages, but to reduce harm. Basically, what we need is controls, guidelines. Information is required. We need to inform parents. This is bad before the age of 13, for example, but these are the reasons why. We need guides that adults, parents, and youth can use as they work to understand this sector. Such and such should be banned as before such and such an age because of this, and that's how you'd use all three elements. Thank you, Mr. Champoux, for 2.5 minutes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think that one of your recommendations, Mr. Desrosiers, and what you presented to us here at the committee is really relevant, which would be to work on time and go back to what the government withdrew when it hoped to gain advantage in its negotiations with Trump. It didn't have that effect, and right now we in Quebec are suggesting that we should bring that back, the royalties on internet and platforms and so on. It could be $3 to $4 million a year. That could be very helpful for the public treasury. What do you think we should do? We have been mentioning lifestyle studies as well as media itself, which is suffering because the large digital giants are really taking over the entire space, media space, retail space. So I think we all need to take action. Now, how should we take action to change a social phenomena, a health phenomena? There's something called the Ottawa Charter. You all know, I'm sure, about it, given that you are here in Ottawa. But the Ottawa Charter says, the Charter of Ottawa, if you wish, says that to change a social phenomena, you have to educate individuals, you have to change the environment, and you need to change the law. The institutions as well. We've mentioned schools. We've mentioned legislation to control the companies. We've spoken of educating youth and parents. So I refer you to that model, the Charter of Ottawa, which is used around the world, actually, to affect social change. There's something else you've brought up, being that the programs or initiatives already underway aren't well known. They're not shared. And we've learned that here as we carry out this study. There are a number of very interesting initiatives that we've heard about from a number of groups around Canada, across Canada, and throughout Quebec. And translating these tools, sharing them, these organizations aren't always able to translate their material. But even beyond translation, the fact that they're not well known, they're not disseminated, is there something we should do to ensure that people learn about the tools that are already being used, such as MediaSpan, what you've mentioned, CyberAid, for example, CyberAid. There are a number of solutions, but they aren't well known because they haven't funds to publicize themselves or necessarily translate themselves when that's required. And it is clear, a woman earlier, I don't remember her name, but I heard her, very interesting, she as well, was looking for tools for parents. I mean, there's pauseyourscreen.com, for example. There are a number of tools listed there for educators, for parents, for youth, some quizzes, some self-tests, also references. All the Canadian groups, we try to put them all in there. And to wind up, picking up on what my colleague Mr. Waugh was saying earlier, he seems quite pessimistic about how much use we can make about, well, the studies that we carry out here. Yes, it's true. We have carried out work that didn't lead to effective legislation. There are some bills that died on the order paper. But I hope that this time round in this study, we will make true use of your testimony. So please take it from me. Your testimony has taught me a lot and will certainly be making many good recommendations to our analysts to draw up our report, which will not remain unused.
All right, my first question is coming over to Josephine. Josephine, you have the undivided attention of members of Parliament from the Bloc Québécois, the Liberals, and the Conservatives. Our eyes are entirely on a screen in front of us, and you are on that screen. If there is a message that you want to drive home today in terms of young people using social media and what government can do to make things better for you and for your peers, what do you want us to know?
Oh, hello. I think that what the government needs to know is that any sort of success with a social media ban, restriction, or just having an internet that we are not beholden to comes with communicating with young people. Young people includes children, teenagers, and young adults. It's not just one group or category of youth. And I think success for us would look like an internet where it's there, it exists, as does social media. It's going to continue to. I think a sentiment that has been repeated often today by the witnesses is that we're not looking to abandon the internet, abandon social media. It's here to stay. But success is the ability to navigate it mindfully, and that we are able to log off and live our lives without being easily accessible all the time. It's a tool at the end of the day, and tools are meant to be put down. And in terms of sextortion and image-based abuse and CSAM material, whether generated by AI or collected by predators, it's real-life consequences for those who commit heinous acts of harm. So I think that's what I have to say. Thank you very much, MP Thomas, for the time to speak.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for answering the question. I know that it can be maybe a little bit overwhelming in this group, but you spoke very well, so thank you. My next question is to Luna, and again, I was just reading a number of things, and one of the things that came up for me when in my reading was that the number of child abuse significantly rose during the pandemic, COVID-19, and so I was curious if you could comment as to why that might be the case, and how Luna was able to respond to that.
We saw a significant increase over time through COVID, and particularly as the pandemic carried on and kids were back in school, lots of abuse was reported. So, it's hard to have a really clear, definitive answer, but I would say educators are often the number one reporting source. So during that time when kids were out of school, we saw increases in abuse in the home. We saw an increase in sibling abuse, and all of that started to be, as the pandemic went along, we saw increasing reports near the end as those reports came in and kids started to get back in school, and those reports and disclosures came forward. So it was a staggering increase that we saw after COVID.
Wow. Okay.
So school as a significant protective factor.
Yeah. That's an excellent observation. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that you also talked about in your opening remarks was the fact that you're seeing an increase in the number of cases that are coming forward where there is some sort of online contact that is a part of the larger picture of abuse. Do you care to comment on that in terms of what you're observing and why that might be?
I think it's just the vast amount of exposure that children have. We're not talking minutes, it's hours and hours a day. Kids are connected almost all the time. And I did provide some stats on my brief on that. So at some point, we're just the huge amount of increased exposure is increasing the probability that they're being contacted through these applications. And then what we're seeing is, those online instances are translating often into in-person, where kids are going and meeting offenders in public, in malls, in cars. And I will also re-reference the increase in sexual exploitation files that we're seeing at Luna. Those are related to ease of access to kids online. So,
thank you. I appreciate that. And I guess with that, maybe my final question is, I guess again, maybe I'll just put it this way. What is the number one thing that we as legislators need to know as we're considering legislation?
I don't know that I could say it any better than Josephine or Sarah or any of the other witnesses. I think I've heard today that all of the answers are here and are very clear. And I would just say it's also very clear that the complexity of this issue, like any other large, messy social problems, requires a multi-pronged approach. And we need to just do something. I think somebody earlier on said we can't wait till we have a perfect solution. Kids are being harmed every single day. And everything we do, working towards solutions and integrating the knowledge that we do have and our understanding of the severe long-term social and economic consequences to children and their families and our society. We just need to move forward every day with something. This is educating children, educating parents, educating teachers. It is holding platforms accountable. It is engaging everybody in this without delay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Miles, you have the floor for the final 5 minutes.
Great. Thank you very much. Josephine, we're going to go back to you for a second because your testimony was really great. I also had a question just about, you mentioned it's a tool, and I agree. I think part of what we're struggling with is whether it as a tool, as it exists right now, is too addictive or too dangerous as a tool for people to use. I think early on when we did this, we talked about cigarettes, and the idea of, who has access to it, how we regulate it, how heavily regulated it is now. We know that social media is super addictive. I guess primarily, Josephine, I just wondered if in your mind, as it exists now, as a person who interacts with social media, do you feel that it is, that it itself needs to be regulated, needs to be changed, as in that way it behaves and the way you interact with it, how it interacts with you?
That's a big question. And I'll only be able to answer it from the perspective of a teenager, not someone Zachary's age or even younger who are online. I think when we engage with it mindfully and we remember how powerful it is, I think one common saying is that it's basically a rocket in our hands. Why? That's one thing that was parroted to me when I was younger. When we engage with that mindset, it can be good. And it can be used for good, and it can be used to communicate with others and experience, or at least listen to people's perspectives that are different from our own. Because originally, way back in 2000, the olden days, not the olden days, but when it was originally presented to us, it was presented to us as a form of communication. And I think at the end of the day, if we take this time to sort of think about it and think about how we interact with it, it can be used for that intent. But obviously, it can also be used as a form of harm, as we've heard today from the witnesses, and as I'm sure that you've also heard in the other community hearings. I'm not sure if that exactly answers the questions, but that's my own experience with it. It can be good if we're mindful.
It absolutely does. And it's so great to hear you speak. I actually feel like this is clearly a voice that we've been missing in this committee, and it is really valuable to have you be able to express it so clearly. So thank you very much. Maybe I'll ask a question to Sarah Austin, if it's okay. I think you're... I just had a question about regulations in terms of regulating big tech, and now that we're seeing it happen in international environments. What do you see as the probability, how that goes down? I understand there's lots of lawsuits in America, but what are we seeing internationally in terms of getting under the hood and working, regulating big tech?
Canada has an opportunity now to look to other countries. I mean, Canada has already been studying this for years. We know that our government, Department of Heritage and Justice, have looked at models in Europe and around the world. They've looked at the best practices. They obviously had a false start last year with Bill 63, where there were flaws in it. We know that the current Minister of Heritage has been working at new legislation. This committee has been hearing from numerous experts on this topic. There's clear consensus from a wide range of experts that the Online Safety Act needs to include core elements around the duty of care, around the independent regulation, around safety by default and age-appropriate design, public interest research so that data can be accessible to be able to measure the harms, and have AI systems in scope. There's clear consensus from leading experts across Canada on this topic, and that we can't simply look at a social media ban alone. We need to look at online regulation that looks at the full scope of digital harms affecting children. And so, we're urging the government to get this legislation tabled for all members of Parliament to work together, to find consensus, to work quickly. It's not going to be the silver bullet, but we know what's worked in other jurisdictions. We can take the best in class examples and apply them here in Canada and amend the legislation as the digital landscape evolves.
Just quickly, are the big tech companies in these international experiences, are they changing their behavior in those circumstances?
They're being forced to change behavior and being held accountable when there are consequences, when they've caused harm. And we know right now here in Canada that the tech industry is funding a major effort to try and oppose this legislation. It should get all our spidey senses up. If we see Meta funding studies that support age restrictions, because it really lets them off the hook. Meta will be off the hook if we impose age restrictions, because it actually doesn't force them to change any of their behavior. It puts the onus again back on Apple and for doing the age verification. And so we need legislation that really looks at this in a robust way and that follows best practices from jurisdictions around the world, and where we create a solution that really puts our children first.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. Thank you very much for bringing that up. Thanks.
Really valuable testimony from everybody today. Thank you to Children First Canada for bringing young people who are far wise beyond their years, and to everyone else for your valuable testimony. As Carol Todd mentioned at the beginning, she's already submitted a brief to this committee, which we will all read. If anybody else has something they didn't manage to get on the record today, or further points that occurred to you afterwards, please don't hesitate to send us that detail in an email, and we can include it in our report. But that's our last meeting on this topic. It's been really eye-opening, and once again, I thank everyone for their participation. And with that, seeing that we're out of time, I consider this meeting adjourned.